Alright, welcome back to another episode of Nydal. Today, well, I wanted to do something that I've been wanting to do from day one, way before I started working on this city, which is having some sort of creek sort of meander in between the city. Originally, that river that you see on the right side of the screen was supposed to be like a tiny river, and there's going to be houses just built right up against it. And later, when I did some final terraforming before we started the project, I kind of decided that I wanted a much larger river. So this one right here, the one I'm about to start terraforming, is going to be a much smaller one. It's just going to be a tiny little stream that's, like I said, it's going to meander through a couple of these neighborhoods, and obviously it's going to end on the main bay there. And I've already posted a few screenshots of this, I'm going to say like 2 weeks ago on my Twitter page. And I often do that, so if you want to see teasers of things that are coming, or whenever I'm working on something and I get really excited, I usually take a couple screenshots and post them on Twitter. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're following me. In order to get this creek to work, many of you probably already know what I'm doing, but I've noticed that we have a lot of new people in this just tuning into the series. So you may not know that I'm using a whole bunch of mods. I mean, obviously, by now you probably know that I'm using a gazillion mods. But particularly, the one I'm using to create this creek is the More Beautification mod that allows you to, well, basically enables all of these terraforming tools that you see at the bottom of the screen that I'm switching between. These are the terraforming controls that you get when you open the map editor. And but by default, I think on one of the latest updates of the game, they included some terraforming controls, some very basic ones, but they rely on soil. So basically, there's like a limited amount of dirt in the city. And if you remove dirt from one place, you have like a dirt sort of credit or soil credit that you can later use to create a mountain or something like that. Obviously, I have all of that disabled. I really want to add as many mountains or bring down mountains or rivers or anything like that as much as I want. I don't want the game to tell me what I can or cannot do. So I'm using, again, More Beautification mod. And one of the features that it has is that the base game doesn't have, is the fact that you can add sources of water. So that's kind of what I did. I added a small source of water at the the top end of that hill over there, and it just creates a water source that makes all this water flow downhill, basically. And on this side of the creek, I decided to put down a pedestrian path, a very small pedestrian path that's just going to be like a little walk right up against the stream. On the other side of the island, I'm not going to basically do much work in this episode. On the other side, we're probably going to leave that for a future episode, maybe the next one, maybe some other episode. At this point, I haven't recorded anything else more than this, and this commentary, by the way, is being recorded like I would say a couple days before this video is supposed to go out, so it's pretty fresh, even though this episode was recorded in one large sitting about 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I'm not sure if the other end of the river this stream is going to look exactly the same. Probably not. I'm thinking of doing something a bit more dense in terms of the types of buildings that I'm going to have there. One thing I noticed though is that I needed, since there's a lot of roads sort of converging here, I wanted a bridge that some sort of like interchange of sorts. I mean, obviously this is just a roundabout, and I'm later going to change this. I tried a lot of different combinations of things, but I wanted not only to have road access coming being able to drive to the other side, but also the tram tracks. There's like 3 lines of tram tracks sort of converging here, and this was particularly tricky because I wanted to. Well, I wanted to have an integrated sort of a bridge, and first I tried Jay's Bay Bridge assets. You can actually turn these into just custom bridges. It doesn't have to be the suspension bridge that we have on the entrance of town. That's basically the approach segment that you're looking at on the screen right now. I thought it was looking great, except, doing the double-decker thing here, I just wasn't getting something that I liked. I tried a whole bunch of different things and eventually ended up settling with just a regular avenue with the train tracks, obviously using Nydal's assets, if I'm not mistaken. His train tracks are like much more detailed than the vanilla ones. I'm also trying like to clip things over one another. It's just all kinds of glitchiness happening here. We're probably going to talk more about this bridge in just a few minutes once I get to actually, that's actually the final design, except I'm going to add a lot more detail to it in just a second. One thing I wanted to mention that I totally forgot in the previous episode, and I was just looking at the comments, not that there were comments related to that, but I forgot to mention that the houses I used in the suburbs in the previous episode are actually part of a DLC. And it's a DLC by a community creator, in this case, Vanya. I've been using a lot of her work in previous projects and even this one, except she has this European suburban package. I think it's actually called the European Suburbia. You can find it in the workshop or in the Paradox Plaza store. This is not sponsor or anything, but these are some really good looking houses. I think she made an amazing job there, and I highly recommend you. If you want any kind of DLC that's not like the main ones, and you want to support creators, that's definitely one to consider. I don't have the other ones. I think there's like one or two more that came out by creators, but I think Avania's is probably by far one of the best. Also, there's a ton of noise outside of my window. Hopefully that wasn't caught on mic. In any case, we're continuing with the same sort of park design, except now in between the church on the hill, we have... oh, this is interesting. I forgot I did this. Just following a random bike, just to... Instead of doing cinematics in the middle of the episode, I guess you get to see a little bit of how this is working and also looking like. But my point is, I was trying to sort of continue with the same park design that I did on the other side, where we have all these paths sort of meander through the neighborhood, and from the church towards the creek, there's going to be all these like multiple layers and tiers of development of many kinds. Primarily, this one was a little bit challenging because, well, there's a bit of a steep hill coming down into the creek, and having all these buildings there that kind of like try to push the terrain or pull the terrain, for that matter, up. It just creates some glitchiness. So in a moment, you're gonna see me do again or play with keys, so that you sort of bridge the gap and make everything look a little bit nicer. If you spend enough time doing things like this, most glitches can be fixed. And of course, I'm still trying to mix up some of the old classic buildings with some modern stuff that happens all the time in real life. Unlike what I've been seeing in the comments, that some people are like, no, don't put those buildings, those are ugly. That's the point. Not everything needs to look like super idyllic and beautiful and pretty. Otherwise, it looks like a movie set. I want things to be a little bit not perfect every once in a while. For the most part, it's pretty like perfect and nice and tidy. I mean, the city, I don't know if you noticed. You probably already noticed by now, but it's like super clean. There's like not even like no decals or anything like that. I may add a few of those in future episodes. But right now I'm focused on, getting most of the obvious stuff detailed and try to expand the city as much as I can, because one thing I really wanted to focus in this series, which is something that I haven't done in previous series, is, well, transit. I know I said that many times and I really want to do it, but I also don't want to start laying down bus lines on a city that's half finished, where I would have to go back in a couple episodes and just edit everything again. So I rather spend, let's say the next first or the 10 first episodes of this series just expanding the city as much as I can. And once I have a decent size of at least of the core of the city, it's kind of finished, then I can start laying down some of the tram tracks, and obviously we're gonna have some bus lines as well. So that's definitely coming, and it's probably going to be a live stream. Been really eager to live stream Nydal. I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I was probably going to host a live stream. That it turned out I couldn't do it for multiple reasons, but that's something that I definitely want to do, and you should look forward to. Hopefully, it's probably going to come up as a schedule live stream. I want to give people the most or the biggest chance to actually catch it, because whenever I just like live stream like immediately without telling anyone, it's usually not that many people can watch it, and then I get a ton of questions whether or not they can watch it later. All my live streams, for the most part, or I would say the majority of my live streams, are recorded and then uploaded to YouTube, so you should not fear that from my live streams. But I definitely there's like a whole another experience when you actually watch it live, and then you get to ask me questions, and then I can answer them on camera and even show you how things work and whatnot. So definitely worth setting up your calendars whenever that happens. So I'll make sure that I'll give you at least like a 48-hour notice of some kind. This little corner of the map, just changing subjects, wasn't too big, and of course, like I said in the previous episode, we need some space for parking lots. Usually these are in the middle of the block or kind of on like edges of things. So that's primarily what I'm doing. And I try to mix stuff up with the handicap spots, some EV charging spots, and then just regular parking. That's sort of the pattern that I've been using all over the place. One thing I want to do probably in future episodes, I'll add a few more trees, especially in the gaps, because the buildings obviously don't necessarily fit on these, like for example in this corner it's like a pointy shape, and then you end up with that weird gap there where you can't really put buildings without them having them look a little bit odd. So I tend to fill those spots, basically round out the corner with buildings, and then the gap, that's that triangle gap that was sitting there, I try to fill it with, in this case, a gazebo, which is no longer in the screen because I guess I did that really quickly and my explanation took much longer than that. And on this other side, this is sort of what we worked on in a couple episodes ago, but I decided to add a few more details that I thought were fitting. You're gonna see in just a few minutes, actually, and I would say in a minute and a half, once we get into the cinematics. Man, this episode like flew by. Holy crap. You're gonna see how that whole area looks like, because I did add a lot of detail that's not necessarily, that wasn't necessarily captured on camera. Now this thing, I have a couple things to say about this bridge. I wanted to make it look not vanilla, because obviously this avenue is pretty vanilla-ish. So I'm using decals to make it. Originally I wanted like one of those bridges that sort of opens up and allows big boats to come in. So I'm putting down these like crossguard thingies. But then I realized, dude, that creek is like so tiny. There's no way boats can actually go there. Like it wouldn't make any sense. I was really set into doing that, but I think I'm gonna do that on definitely want to do that on other bridges and probably in other areas of the city. But for the time being, I decided to not make it like one of those, like, I don't know, there's a name for those. I know the name in Spanish, but I don't know the name in English for those bridges that sort of open up and allow bigger boats to go under. But I did like that aesthetic. I sort of clipped together those metallic structures to give it a bit more of an industrial look. So I think I'm going to leave that for now. Maybe I'm not like 100% sold on it, but it just adds a lot of character and makes it look less vanilla, which is kind of what I was aiming for. And this is the thing that everyone's like super enjoying, apparently, the before and after. I'm actually pretty excited. It really gives you a sense of everything that we did here. And yeah, this whole area, I think it just came out great. I'm super excited, and honestly, I have no idea what I'm going to be working on next, but I'm sure it's going to be awesome, of course. Why wouldn't it be? But if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving this video a like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe you can also consider subscribing as well to be notified whenever I live stream or whenever there's a next episode of Nydal. But that's pretty much all for now. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next one.